Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of Meezan lecture series. In this series, as you all would recall, we are studying Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi treatise Meezan. And in this treatise, in his book, he has actually penned down his understanding of Islam. And we have gone through a better part of his book. The chapter that we are studying these days regards faith and beliefs. And the section of the chapter that we'll be discussing today relates to belief in the books of God. So we all know that just as there are various tenets of belief, including belief in God, belief in the hereafter, belief in the prophets of God, belief in God Himself. So there is also this tenet in which we are required to profess belief in all the divine scriptures of God. So, in this particular talk, I will be discussing Ustaz Ghamadi's views regarding belief in divine books. So, he starts off this discussion by citing verse 136 of Surah number 4, which is Surah Nisa, which reads like this: Ya ayyuhallazina aminu billahi wa rasulihi wal kitabil lazi nazzala ala rasuli wal kitabil lazi anzala min qabl wa man yakfur billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusuli wal yawmil akhir فَقَدْ ضَلَّ ضَلَالًا بَعِيدًا. Believers have faith in God and His Messenger. In the book He has revealed to His Messenger, and also in the book He has previously revealed. And remember that he who denies God, His angels, His books, and His prophets in the last day has strayed afar. So, Ustaz Ghamidi says that just as the Almighty has sent prophets to guide mankind, in a similar manner, He has revealed His books to these prophets for this very purpose. And the purpose of these books is that people have with them the written guidance of God in His very words, so that they can judge between what is right and what is wrong through these books and are able to resolve their differences through them. And therefore, in this manner, they are able to adhere to what is true and correct in matters of religion. So, in other words, the purpose of these divine books is to make mankind adhere to what is the true version of religion. And for this, he cites these Quranic verses that are now being displayed before you. وَأَنزَلَ مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ لِيَحْكُمَ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ فِي مَا اخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ, which translates as, and with these prophets, he sent down his book as the decisive truth, so that it may settle these differences between people. And then we have a similar verse, وَأَنزَلْنَا مَعَهُمُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْمِيزَانَ لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. And with these messengers, we sent down our book, which is the judge between the right and the wrong, so that through it, people are able to adhere to justice regarding religion. So these two fundamental verses also point out to the fact that as far as these books are concerned, they are meant to bring mankind on the pathway towards what true religion is all about. And if there is any difference that is created by people's understanding, then these books will stand as a benchmark, as a barometer. Now, at this point of time, the time that we are standing today, the time that we find ourselves today, the anthology of books found in the Bible shows that apparently these books were given to each and every prophet in some form or the other. And the Quran actually mentions the Torah and the Gospel. That is something that we all know. It does so in copious ways at various instances. On one occasion in Surah Ala, in verse 19, it also refers to the scripture of Abraham, Suhuf Ibrahim. And also in these verses that we have just cited, this also corroborates this premise that all these divine books are books of God. The Quran requires of the Muslims to broadly profess faith in these books without any discrimination. But we can clearly see that out of these many books, which we'll find in the anthology of the Bible, there are four books which occupy exceptional importance. So we know the Torah, which was revealed to Moses, the Psalms revealed to Prophet David, the Gospel revealed to Prophet Jesus, and the Quran revealed to Prophet Muhammad. So these four books, they occupy primary importance. And with this, we also understand that as far as the Quran is concerned, the primary difference between the Quran and the previous scriptures, all of these previous scriptures, is that it is the only book which is found in its original format and language. We have its exact text, the way it was revealed by the Almighty, which is contrary to what the other books are. So all other books are translations of some original script which we no longer have. So Ustad Ghamidi then goes on to explain or go in some detail regarding each of these four books so that we can have some idea of how we can understand them. So, as we all know, that the Torah was revealed to Prophet Moses, and it is generally composed to be composed of five books, which are found at the beginning of the Bible, and which are also called the Pentateuch. So, if you enumerate them, if you read their titles, so they are Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and the fifth one is Deuteronomy. Star says that a deep reflection on these books show that the first four books comprise the Torah in its historical order, in its chronological order, and in the Deuteronomy, the Torah has been arranged in the form of a book by separating it from historical opinions and temporary directives in the same manner as the Quran was. We know that the Quran was revealed over a period of 22 years. It had a chronological sequence, and then later on, it was given a new sequence. And we now have the Quran in its a new sequence or the second sequence, which was, of course, also done right in the time of Prophet Muhammad under the guidance of Gabriel. So Star says this is no different in the case of the Torah. The first four books, they actually signify the chronological text of the Torah, in which, of course, the Torah was revealed as events progressed in the times of Prophet Moses. And once that had happened, then it was given a new order and it was stripped of its historical references, and only the actual directives were remained, and that is what we call it Torah, Deuteronomy. So the word Deuteronomy actually means the revised canon or the second law. So in its present shape, it was probably compiled, according to stars, in the 5th century BC. However, the way the prophet Jesus has referred to it, one can say that it has its corroboration to some extent. The Hebrew text of the Torah, which is now published in manuscripts and published form, is called the Masoretic text. So you must have heard of this term, Masoretic text. So the Hebrew text of the Torah, which is now found in manuscripts and also in published form, is called the Masoretic text. It is generally accepted that besides this text, there were other variants also in ancient times, and at places there were important differences between them. The Samaritan Pentateuch, and especially the oldest version of the Torah from the Greek Septuagint, show evidence of these differences. The guidance of God provided by the prophets to mankind, basically, as we all know, and we've discussed this earlier also, has two categories. So one is called the Sharia or the law, and the other is called the Hikmah or the philosophy and wisdom of religion. So it is the Sharia, according to stars, which constitutes the major portion of the Torah, and thus it is named on this basis. So the word Torah actually means the law. And the Quran calls it Hudan li Bani Israel, Hudan li Bani Israel, which means it is the guidance for the Israelites. And it also says about it, Tafseelan li kulli shay, which means that it has all important, relevant details. And it says, the Quran says, that it contains the directive of God, Fiha hukmullah. It is guidance and light, Fiha hudan wa nur, and is mercy for people. No doubt the Quran also mentions the interpolation of the Jews. It tells us, يُحَرِّفُونَ الْكَلِمَةَ مَوَاضِعِهِ, which means that they would sever the words from their context. But this also is a reality that it broadly corroborates its version, which was available with the Jews in the times of Prophet Muhammad. So very broadly, Quran actually corroborates this version. We can see from the current version of the Torah that the major areas in which this interpolation took place were two primarily. So one of them related to the prophecies of the arrival of the last prophet, and the second one related to the relationship of Abraham with the land of Arabia. So the Jews tried to interpolate this, and they wanted to uh, do away with these prophecies of the arrival of the last prophet, and they tried to distort them. But still, we can find somehow or the other remnants of these prophecies, and they can be very well traced in the text of the Torah even today. And the second one, we also know, is to sever the relationship of Abraham with Arabia so that the arrival of the last prophet is actually considered to be in Palestine, in Canaan. And so that is why we know that in the Torah that we have today, the son that was sacrificed was not Ishmael, as has been said by the Quran, but it was Isaac. So they wanted the progeny of Israelites to be the beneficiary of the last prophet. And so this is how we have a general understanding of the Torah. Next, Ustaz explained the Psalms, which are is called the Zabur in the Quran. So the Psalm is actually the name of the book that was revealed to Dawood or the Prophet David. It is a collection of hymns, which are technically called Psalms. The book of Psalms, which is now found in the Bible, has 5 books and 150 Psalms. So, although Psalms attributed to other people have also found their way in this collection, but a discerning mind can feel the grandeur of a divine discourse in hymns about which it has been specified that they are from David. Like the Gospel, it is the Hikmah which constitutes the Psalms, and the Quran corroborates it as a book revealed by God. So it is a book that was revealed by God, and therefore it is something that even today, when we look at it, we find the remnants of divine revelation in it. Again, as I've just said earlier on, we don't have the book in its original language, but the way that we still have it, the translation that we still have it, anyone who goes through these translations can clearly see how, in spite of the interpolations and translations, or the distortion in translation that has taken place, how it still preserves many teachings of the Almighty, and this can be judged if we judge them against the Quran and the text of the Quran. We find a very large part of the Psalms, and I can also say this for the Torah as well, to be in consonance with the Quran. Next, the third book, which of course we have available with us, is the Gospel or the Injil. The word Injil actually means good news. In the word gospel is a Greek word which means that it gives us good news and glad tidings. And these glad tidings are, of course, about the arrival of the last prophet. So, as has been the case of divine scriptures, it was revealed piecemeal. It was revealed in installments, keeping in view the needs of preaching and propagation. Now, before it could be compiled in the form of a book, Jesus, of course, as we know, was given death. He was not able to complete it before he could do so, as was the case with Moses. So there was a chronological revelation of the Torah, and then we had a final revelation, just as was the case with the Quran. But in the case of the Gospel, this never happened, and it could not be actually compiled in the form of a book. So we don't have it as an arranged book. We have it in the form of independent orations and speeches, and they have reached later generations and to us through oral tradition and written memorandums. And many years later, when people started to compile the biography of Jesus in the form of booklets, these orations were appropriately inserted at various places. So within these Gospels, we have these insertions. And these booklets in which the biography of Jesus was compiled are called the Gospels. So in the early days of Christianity, they were present in a large number. However, we know from history that in 382 AD, the leaders of the Christian church under Pope Damasus selected 4 of them and abandoned the rest and regarded them to be apocryphal. So these 4, which were selected, we know are the ones that we find today, the anthology of the Injil, and they are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are the 4 Gospels that we have today. From these, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are synoptical in nature, which means that they have similar stories, but that is not the case with John. However, of course, we are not going to go into much details as would be required later on. So what we know is that they were originally written in Greek, whereas the language which Jesus spoke was Aramaic, and he delivered his speeches and sermons in Aramaic. So we also know that these Gospels were never ever written in the language which Jesus spoke. For the first time, they were written in the Greek language. And the authors of these Gospels converted to Christianity much later than Jesus. And none of these was written before 70 AD. And the Gospel, according to John, was perhaps written a century after Jesus in the city of Ephesus in Asia Minor. In spite of this, the sermons, parables, and speeches that are found in these Gospels are so conspicuous in divine grandeur that any person aware of the style of divine literature cannot deny them. And it can be safely said that a greater part of the gospel in which the Quran asks us to profess faith in is still preserved in these biographical booklets. So, viewers, these three anthologies or these three books, of course, the Torah, which we find in the form of the book of Deuteronomy as the revised law, then the Psalms, of course, that was revealed to David, and finally Injil or the Gospel that was revealed to Jesus are the three books that we still have with them. They are generally published in a single volume, and the whole volume is also called the Holy Bible. So the word Bible at times is just spoken of the scripture that was revealed to Jesus, and is also synonymous to Injil. And many a time it is also spoken of all the previous scriptures in which, when it was compiled in a single volume, the whole volume was called as the Bible. So this is something that should always be clear. And as we have just seen, the Quran asks us to broadly believe in all these books. We cannot believe in all these books until we are able to read them, until we are able to understand them. And this is one important thing which is missing in the lives of Muslims today. We find them to be barely reading the Quran, and we don't find any Muslim home encouraging people or their children to read the Bible or to read the previous scriptures. It is as if they are totally redundant. It is as if they have lost their place in our religious teaching, which is something which the Quran does not never wanted. Quran has asked us to profess belief in all the books of God. And how can this belief be professed if we don't know what these books contain? We don't want people to have blind belief. So it is very much urged and very much encouraged that people should have a general understanding of the broad teachings of these previous scriptures. There have been a lot of work done by Muslim scholars in which anthologies and selections of the Torah, of the Injil, of the Psalms has been made so that uh, people can have a general idea of these books, but more so if these books are also included in the syllabi of our schools and colleges, similarly, and also taught to our young ones, is something that is clearly very much needed and warranted. Finally, we come to a short introduction of the Quran itself. So, Ustaz Javed Ahmed Ghamidi has described the Quran in his book Meezan, and he says, of course, as is very common knowledge, that it was revealed to Prophet Muhammad, who was the last prophet of God. It is regarded to be the Meezan. So, the word Meezan actually means the scale that distinguishes it, that distinguishes good from evil. So, it's like a scale that tells good from evil, and the Quran is also called the Furqan, and the word Furqan actually means a distinguisher between good and evil. So both these names are found in the Quran. The Quran calls itself as Mizan and also calls itself as Furqan. Another name that it gives itself is Muhaymin. Muhaymin actually is a word that would literally mean a guardian, a protector. So it is like a protector and a guardian over previous scriptures. It means that the Quran is the real and authentic and trustworthy version of the book of God. And in matters of religion, everything accepted or rejected shall be decided under the guidance of the light provided by it. So the Quran about itself has said that وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ من التوراة ومهيمنا عليه فاحكم بينهم بما أنزل الله ولا تتبع أهواءهم عما جاءك من الحق. And, O Prophet, we have revealed to you the book with the truth, in confirmation of the book before it, and standing as a guardian over it. Therefore, give judgment among them according to the guidance revealed by God, and do not yield to their whims by swerving from the truth revealed to you. A very short and a general introduction of the Quran, as we all know, is that it consists of 114 surahs, most of which occur in pairs with regard to their contents. And they are composed in 7 chapters with the sequence of the preaching endeavor of the Prophet in place. So these 7 chapters have 114 surahs, and each of these surahs depicts the phase of the preaching endeavor of the Prophet. In each of these chapters, which are 7, of course, we know that the chronological sequence of the surah is adopted. So, in other words, in each chapter, the arrangement of the surahs is chronological, which means that the surah which is placed first in the chapter was always revealed first. So this is true for each chapter. We all know that its language is Arabic, and it has been revealed to the heart of the Prophet with the directive of God. The Prophet presented it to his people, and from them it was transferred through the consensus and through the verbal and perpetual written perpetuation of the Muslims. In divine literature, this is the only book about which it can be said with full certainty that it is present with us in its original form, shape, language, and arrangement, without the slightest bit of change. The way it has been transmitted through tawatur or perpetuation is a miracle in itself, because this is the only book in this world which, even at this time, can be read out verbatim from its beginning to the end by thousands who have memorized it. Now, history tells us that in the last 14 centuries, this mode of transmission has not ceased for a single day. It is evident from this that it is the Almighty who has made arrangements to protect the Quran. And therefore, the famous verse that we often come across about the protection of the Quran is Inna nahnu nazzalna zikra wa inna lahu lahafizun, which means it was we who revealed the reminder and shall ourselves preserve it. Another similar book regarding the protection of the Quran is وَإِنَّهُ لَكِتَابٌ عَزِيزٌ لَا يَأْتِيهِ الْبَاطِلُ مِنْ بَيْنِ يَدَيْهِ وَلَا مِنْ خَلْفِهِ تَنْزِيلٌ مِنْ حَكِيمٍ حَمِيدٍ. And there is no doubt, and there is no doubt that it is a mighty scripture. Falsehood cannot reach it, neither from in front of it nor from behind it. It is a revelation from a wise and glorious God. So, as far as this verse is concerned, Ustaz Ghamidi goes on to cite his teacher, Imam Amin Islahi, how he has described this feature of the Quran, that it has been protected and how it has endured this promise through all these centuries. So he writes, first, during the time of revelation of the Quran, the Almighty made arrangements that the devils are unable to interfere in the process of divine revelation in any way. Although there is a permanent arrangement to prevent the devils from eavesdropping and listening to divine matters, but during the time of the revelation of the Quran, special arrangements were made in preventing devils from meddling in revelations in any way, so that nothing is able to enter the Quran from in front of it. So, what the Ustaz is trying to describe here is the fact that the first instance of this protection is that when it was being sent down, there was no possibility of any incursion from any divine spirit or jinn or devil, so that it could just change it anyway or cause any discrepancy in it. It was it was sent down the way it was actually acquired by Gabriel, and nothing could be done in any way to tamper with it. And we also know from other instances from the Quran that when people try to eavesdrop on this revelation, these darts or these meteors would pursue a jinn or a devil, and these shooting stars or these darts were basically the ones that would pursue and make them run away from any such possibility. So, second, the angel which the Almighty selected to reveal the Quran has been called by the Quran as the one endued with power, held in honor before the Lord of the throne, obeyed in heavens, moreover trustworthy. This is part of Surah 81, verses 20 and 21. In other words, the angel is so powerful that evil spirits cannot overpower him. He is the head of all angels, and he cannot forget anything. Whatever is entrusted to him by the Almighty, he fully protects. there is not a semblance of a chance that the slightest of change can take place in the revelation entrusted to him. He has a very high rank before the Almighty, which shows that he is ahead of all other creatures as far as abilities are concerned. It is obvious that all this elaborate arrangement has been made to close the doors to any evil entering the Quran from its very origin. So, not only do devils and spirits not be able to cause any incursion in the Quran, also the archangel Gabriel, who brings down revelation or pieces of the Quran to the Prophet, is one who has power, honor, and he's obeyed in the heavens, and he's very, very trustworthy, telling us and conveying to us that there's no one who in any way can induce him to lose any part of revelation. Third, the very person who was entrusted with the Quran was firstly the best of human beings in all respects, and secondly, the responsibility of memorizing, arranging, and safeguarding the Quran was taken up by the Almighty. And the words of Surah Qiyamah are لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به إن علينا جمعه وقرآنه فإذا قرأناه فاتبع قرآنه ثم إن علينا بيانه. To acquire this Quran, do not move your tongue hastily, O Prophet. Upon us is its collection and recital. So when we have recited it, follow this recital, then upon us is to explain it. So Ustaz says that the third thing that has guaranteed the protection is that it was revealed to the best of human beings, and it was preserved through memorization, and it was something which the Almighty made sure of. It is evident from various narratives that whatever text of the Quran would be revealed, the Prophet and his close companions would memorize it. In every Ramadan, the Prophet would read it out to Gabriel or listen from him so that no possibility of any error or omission should remain. And this reading out or listening to would be according to the sequence the Almighty had arranged it. Also evident from certain narratives is that in the last Ramadan of his life, this mutual presentation of the Quran took place twice. Then, in this very arrangement and recital, the whole of the Quran was written down, and later the rightly guided caliphs sent its copies to various cities. This elaborate arrangement or this elaborate treatment was not received by any of the previous scriptures, and about the Torah no one knows when its constituent scriptures were assembled and who was responsible for the task. Fourth, the Quran is a miracle with regard to its eloquent selection of words and the meanings they convey. And so distinct is it in this aspect to others' discourses that they cannot match it. So much so, the words of the Prophet himself, who was the recipient of the Quran and the most eloquent among everyone, could not rival it. Thus, there is no possibility that any extraneous addition be made into it. Consequently, works of people who have dared to answer the challenge of the Quran to bring something similar to it are preserved in history and literature. If a person compares them with the Quran, he will notice the same difference between them as between a pearl and a pebble. In this manner, it is as if the doors to any adulteration from the rare two, which is khalfihi or min khalfihi, have been closed. So, Ustaz has explained in this fourth point that such is the eloquent nature of the wahi itself, of the revelation itself, that it cannot be copied. It's inimitable, which means that none of the people or none of the people who have challenged it have been able to produce something similar to it. Fifthly, to the last point, together with the promise of protecting the Quran, the Almighty has also promised to protect and safeguard its language till the day of judgment. Because of the fact that the language of some divine scriptures became extinct, a lot of changes and interpolations were introduced by way of translations, and we have no clue about them now. However, the real language of the Quran is safe and sound and will remain so until the day of judgment. Hence, there is no possibility of any evil creeping into it by way of translations and commentaries. If anyone tries to introduce some evil in it, men of learning can easily sift it out by testing it against the original text. So, this final point tells us that basically the text of the Quran has been preserved, and also the language of the Quran has been preserved. In other words, the language of the Quran is distinct. And some of the divine scriptures, we know that their language became extinct. So the Hebrew of the Bible in which it was actually revealed, we don't have it. but the language of the Quran has been protected so that in any way, if there is any need to adduce the meaning of the word, then there should not be a problem in any way. So these are the five points which Ustaz has cited from his own teacher, his own Ustaz, Amin Islahi, regarding the preservation and protection of the last scripture, which is the Quran. And of course, this tells us that the Quran has been preserved perfectly verbatim. There has been absolutely no tampering with it. And contrary to the previous scriptures, it is the only word of God that we have with us in its original language and shape. So, with this, we come to an end to this detailed study of these divine books. Of course, more study is needed for students of the Quran and, of course, of the previous scriptures. But this is like an overview and also a sort of stimulant for them to know more about these previous books. Inshallah, in our next sessions, we will continue this fascinating study of beliefs and we'll be discussing another topic. But for the moment, if you have any questions, you may raise them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem, for another fantastic session. Our first question comes from Abdullah Aslam. Please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Ustad. My question is regarding Ayah 129 of Surah Baqarah, in which Ibrahim Islam's dua is mentioned. My first question is regarding the word Yuzakihim. So the word in the ayah under question.
Let me hold this first. I mean, we are taking questions which are related to the topic first, and once they are exhausted, then you can bring questions that are not related to today's topic.
Right, no problem, no worries.
Thank you very much. So far, we don't have any topic related questions. So if somebody has topic related questions, please raise them right now. If not, okay. Nashad Shafqat, please go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Saab, Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Saab, first of all, wanted to know about the protection after God handed over the Quran to Gabriel. And it is said that the devils would try to intercede and, eavesdrop on that. Now, if the Quran was being revealed, how would the devils be able in any manner to come and adulterate it or put something in from their own side? Because this is something which I find a little odd to my understanding.
So this is precisely what has been discussed, that these devils and these evil spirits, they try to eavesdrop, they try to steal a part of any communication that God is making and delivering to his prophet. They try to do so, but they are not able to succeed. So this actually tells us, and there are other instances in the Quran which speak of the fact that when they try to come near it, they are repelled from that place. And there is like a meteor or a shooting star that pursues them. And we know from the Quran the word Shihab Saqib, which means that these shooting stars and meteors, when you see in the sky, they are actually doing their own job of repelling these satanic spirits or devils who try to eavesdrop. So precisely that is what is being described here, that they are not able, they do try, but they are not able to succeed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Akram Batsisa, please go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, when you read tafsir, different scholars, there's a difference of understanding. Is that how the older other books were changed or end up getting their understanding changed? So to avoid the tafsir is better than just to the translation because of that reason.
Sorry, I couldn't get your question.
I'm understanding that. I'm trying to say is that when I read the different tafsir of same surah from different scholars, their understanding is different. Is that how the other scriptures were end up with a different version, different changes?
So see, these are two fundamentally different processes. You see, the tafsir or books of exegesis of Muslim scholars, the reason for their difference is their own difference of understanding a particular text. So because of the fact that most of them took to understanding the text through hadith literature, and we had different ahadiths which different people quoted, so we had different interpretations. So that is a different line, I would say, The difference in tafsir is basically because of this difference in understanding that was found in amongst our scholars, not only when they tried to directly interpret the Quranic verse, but because they went through the route of hadith literature to interpret them. As for the previous scriptures are concerned, the difference between them is that they were not preserved in the original language. We have translations, we have historical references, we have interpolations, and we have a sort of a broad chunk of what people understood of the original that is now preserved. And also, as I said, there have been changes. So the reason, of course, for both is different. In the second case, the text was preserved, the Quranic text was preserved, but the interpretation of the Quranic text was basically a human endeavor, and because human endeavors can be different, so there were differences in the interpretation as well. But in the first case, the text itself became different. We don't have the original text of either of the previous scriptures. And so, because of these differences that already were existent in the original language, they continue to be the points of differences, and people continue to debate on them until the Quran was revealed in order to settle the differences that were found in these previous scriptures.
Would it be fair to say that if had Allah Subhanahu wa Taala not preserved the Quran in his own wisdom and in his original form, that could have been the case? It would end up being changed.
I mean, there would have been no point if the Quran was not preserved. God's last guidance would have disappeared from the face of this earth. In the previous instances, this could have been afforded. Why? Because the institution of prophethood had not been terminated, and every new prophet could have corrected any previous shortcoming or a fault in the previous divine revelation from not being preserved. But once the institution of prophethood was to be terminated, then there had to be a scripture protected and preserved so that it could substitute for these divine messengers and could stay forever in place of them.
Okay, understood. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Noshad Shafkat, please go ahead.
Dr. That when you ask us to read the older revealed books, when we read them, Alhamdulillah, I have done so on the entire thing. But what part to believe in and what part not to believe in, that I think should be left to our individual discretion, or do we have any guidelines to follow? Like anything that does not contradict the Quran. For example, Ghamidi Sahib in his commentary on verse 124 of Surah Baqarah, relating to the sacrifice of Isaac, quotes from the Bible, because that has given much more detail about how the sacrifice took place and how that. So, are we to exercise caution while reading the other books? And how do we discern whether we are on the right path or not there?
Well, in general, if you have a habit of reading the Quran and you have a continuous look at the Quran, you have a basic understanding of what the contents of the Quran. Normally, this would be sufficient for you to read the Bible or the previous books and then come across any difference in teaching. And of course, if there's a question, you can always consult a scholar. But generally, if you have a general understanding and overview of the contents of the Quran, that should suffice. But of course, there could be areas in which you can always consult books or scholars. And other than that, of course, we have scholarly books on this topic as well. I've often cited the work of Imam Abdul Majid Daryabadi, who himself wrote a exegesis of the Quran in 4 volumes. And one of the distinguished features of this exegesis is that wherever the Quran and the previous scriptures have some similarity, or the citation of the Quran is in conformity, he always cites those portions of the previous scriptures below those Quranic verses. So that is a very good handbook to have. It's like a very beneficial thing. It's available in English and Urdu because both were originally written by him in both languages. They are not translations. So that is one very good resource that anyone who would like to read the previous scriptures in harmony with the Quran can. It's like an indispensable source of this for such students.
So the name again, please, Daryabadi.
Yes, Abdul Majid Daryabadi.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. So grateful.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. Last call for any topic related questions. If not, we'll take a question from the chat that asks, is it essential to believe in Quran to get eternal salvation in the hereafter? And what does the Quran say about this?
You see, in the absence of the Quran, once the Quran had not been part of our intellectual and religious history, the Almighty says that whatever you know from your own instincts, your intuition, and your intellect is something on the basis of which you will be held accountable. For example, your own intuition would tell you that there is a God, but all that you would come to the conclusion regarding your intuition is the existence of God, but you would not be able to find out or know how the God that we find ourselves forced to believe that someone has created us, we would not know the details of his attributes. Similarly, your own instincts and your own intuition and your own conscience tells you what right and wrong are. So, in the absence of any divine guidance, we will be held accountable on the basis of our own intuition and our own in our own intellect. But once divine guidance has come and has reached us, then it becomes equally important to believe in it, and because it attests to our own internal guidance, and which is called innate guidance, and it fills the gaps. As I just said, at times we would like to know more details about God, and hence the book provides us. Similarly, it tells us how we can connect to God, what are the worship rituals that through which we can connect to God. So yes, belief in the book or the divine book is equally essential. The only exception could be when you are living in a certain part of the world where divine knowledge has failed to reach itself. For example, there could be jungles of Amazon or maybe far off areas in which divine guidance has not reached them. But other than that, a person should have, you should have the opposite belief. You should tell us that why is it that you should not believe in God when in the book of God when it has been specifically sent for the guidance of human intellect.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem. That seems to be all the topic-related questions that we have. So we're going to open the floor for non-topic related questions until the timing of the session ends. Abdullah Aslam, please go ahead.
Yeah, so my question was regarding the verse 129 of Surah Baqarah, in which the prayer of Ibrahim is mentioned. The first question is regarding the word Yuzakihim. In the ayah under question, the Yuzakihim word is muakhar, while in Surah Baqarah ahead, and then Surah Al Imran, and then Surah Jumu'ah, and other places, the word is muqaddam. So, what is the reason between this taqdeem and ta'khir? The second question is regarding the third part of
So
this verse.
let's go one by one. I might forget this
Okay.
first.
No worry.
You see, once it is clear that the objective of religion is tazkiyah or purification, once we are absolutely clear about it, because we have verses of the Quran in which al-kitab and al-hikmah are mentioned without tazkiyah, without the word yuzakkihim or yuzakkikum. And we know in Surah Baqarah there is a verse which says, yu'allimukumul kitaba wal hikmah wa yu'allimukum ma lam takunu ta'lamun. He taught you the book and the law and the wisdom, and he taught what you knew not, which refers clearly to the fact that the contents of religion are just two, which is Sharia and Hikmah. And from other places of the Quran, as well as from the one that I've just cited, it becomes evident that the content of the Quran is just the book, which is Al-Kitab and Al-Hikmah. So, in other words, Tazkiyah is not a content of religion, it's an objective of religion. It is the objective of religion. So, if this is true, and then you trace its occurrence in all these four instances which you have just referred to, you'll find that it encircles Al-Kitab and Al-Hikmah. In some cases, it is mentioned prior, and in some cases, it is mentioned right at the end. It is as if it encircles the two contents of religion, and it conveys us that from whichever angle you look at it, basically, it is the objective of religion that we must gauge, and that is tazkiyah. So, by actually mentioning it at times before the content of religion and at times after the content of religion, the purpose is to tell us its importance and how it encircles as an objective the contents of religion.
Okay, so got it. Now regarding the contents of religion, the Kitab and Hikmah. Today's topic was also regarding the books. If you look at the divine scheme, Torah came first, and then came Gospel. So the kitab came first and then came the hikmah.
Hmm.
What makes sense to me is that hikmah should come first and then kitab. Ustad Ghamidi himself in his book explained the hikmah of the deen first and then he went to the sharia, the kitab. So what is the reason behind the Quran sequence of always
Correct.
mentioning kitab first and then hikmah?
So this is in the divine scheme of the Almighty. It does not mean that the hikmah was not present. What it means is that when the Torah was written down, the law, the portion of the law was the one that was written down. Otherwise, the hikmah of the law was always there. It was found in the oral communication of the Torah itself. So it was the orality that preserved the hikmah. But we know that that orality was lost to posterity, and hence it needed to be written down. So what we can say is that in written form, it was something that was revived in the time of Jesus. It's not that it was never there. So it was always there, but the thing is that it was found in oral form, and it was not preserved in its oral form. But the law was always written down, and it was preserved as well.
So far, we don't have any more raised hands or questions in the chat. Is there something you'd like to add to anything, Dr. Saleem, while we're
Not,
waiting?
not particularly, because I think we've covered a very major and important part. Perhaps one thing that I would like to reiterate is that all those who are listening in at the moment, if they are already part of some of the sections that we discussed, then that is fine. Otherwise, one thing that they can communicate on their behalf as much as they can amongst their own families and their own acquaintances is the importance of reading the previous scriptures, which has just disappeared from Muslim readings of religion. So we no longer have the Torah or the Injil or the Psalms as reading material amongst our religious texts. We don't have them for our children. We don't have them for ourselves. It is as if they're non-existent, which is quite a shame. It's a pity, I would say. So, as much as you all can, please revive the reading of the previous scriptures amongst your own families, amongst your own kin, amongst your own acquaintances, because it's a treasure that we are losing. We will not be knowing the treasure that these books house for us. They are repositories of God's wisdom also. And we have the light of the Quran, so we can judge the right from wrong as well. But clearly, this is something that is really missing in our lives. And we would do well if we can really go back and really pick up from these books as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem, for reiterating such a strong point. Bismillah Tirmizi Ahmed, please go ahead.
So, Dr. Saleem, what is the particular part of the previous scriptures that we need to read? I mean, I do know that the entire book is not the word of God. There are certain sections which are. Is there a particular section we should read? And I also wanted to add, okay, people don't even read the Quran, Dr. Saleem, let alone reading the previous scriptures. It has become such an anomaly. People don't even normal people, like, they don't even know,
Right.
because whenever you bring up the wisdom of brings up the wisdom of the Quran in a setting, one is looked upon as, some kind of a fundo or a molvi, or, I've noticed that people don't like, because people don't like being told. People don't like being told that there's reason and logic that God has already given, and, so it's such an uphill battle to convince people to read the previous scriptures, when they don't even read the Quran. So that was just the
You see,
comment I wanted to make. But of course, if you can just clarify what
that is
sections.
something. Yes, so that is something that I've been discussing earlier as well. Always pick and choose your audience. You don't have to say everything to all the people. Think of people or choose people who are recipients, who can be made to understand how important it is to read divine books, especially if they are the younger lot. So you don't have to say everything that you have for all people, because as we all know that religion has been understood, unfortunately, mostly through the lens of emotions and not through the lens of intellect. So you pick and choose your audience. So there are still people amongst your audience who would listen to the voice of reason. If they are such people, please do communicate this to them. And if they are not, then you just don't need to do it. But I can tell you out of my own experience, and I think many people would agree with me, that amongst the younger lot, there are a lot of people who we can tell actually, because for them, it's not emotions that govern our understanding of religion, it is our intellect. So that is something that can be communicated. And at the end of the day, just be wise enough to discuss such topics with people who are congenial to its understanding.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. You're absolutely correct. If you can point out what sections, is there a particular, like there was a red
Oh,
letter Bible you said?
Actually, yes. So I would say that if you have to read the Torah, just read the fifth book, which is the book of Deuteronomy. It's called Istisna in Arabic or Tasniya in Arabic, also the same name in Urdu. This is the fifth book of the Torah. The Torah is called the Pentateuch, which means a collection of five books. So the fifth book is the actual Torah. It's called the book of Deuteronomy. If you have to read the guidance of Prophet Moses. For the Prophet Jesus, as I've repeatedly said, just pick up the Red Letter Bible. They have published the teachings or the words of Jesus in red. You can
Okay.
pick up the text in red. And the Psalms, mostly you'll find that they are pretty close to the original. Only part of them seem to be out of line with the translation. And you'll judge them
Okay.
by yourself. And
Okay.
at the end of the day, I have personally also made a selection of the whole of all these three books. It's called the Selections from the Bible. It has been published by our institute. It's available at our bookstores and our and online as well. So
Okay.
basically, it condenses all the teachings of these three books in a single volume.
Okay. Dr. Saleem, I don't know if I should ask if it's a question. Has been ever been a thought of publishing them with the Quran also for just comparative reading for people's interest, or there's never been
I mean, as I said just earlier on, that Abdul Majid Rayabadi has done so. So he has published
Okay.
all the relevant portions of the Bible of all the three books in annotated annotations below the
Okay.
text of the Quran. You'll
Okay.
find this on the internet, I believe.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. Truly appreciate you.
Thank you very much. Noshad Shafkat, please go ahead.
Sir, no question, just a comment. Seconding what Bisma said initially, is that people I know are not even willing to touch the earlier books. I was surprised, sir, when some elderly people were told that this is the Bible, and they even refused to touch it. They shied away from it. And we need to, and you're absolutely right. Just seconding what you say, sir, from my own experience, I'm now focusing more on passing on the message as much as I have, as little as I know, but passing it on to the younger generation who are much, much more receptive than the older generation. Just needed to make this comment, and thank you very much for the guidance, sir.
And let me also tell you that one of the reasons for which the Bible study is discouraged amongst Muslims is a hadith of the Prophet, which is not authentic at all, on the authority of Prophet of Caliph Umar. That when the Prophet found him reading the Torah and praising it and speaking in favor of it, so the Prophet became red in the face and he became very angry. And this is often cited as as a reason that why should Muslims not read the previous scriptures, because the Prophet became angry when Umar praised the Torah. So let me tell you that this narrative is not authentic at all. It has, it has been cited in our sources, but it lacks authenticity. And if ever it has some semblance of background, it can only be when the Quran was being revealed. Obviously, the Prophet wanted the companions to fully focus on the revelation and preservation and memorization of the Quran. That is the only explanation, if at all, that can be proffered for this narrative. Otherwise, in its own text, it is absolutely, I would say, wrongly reported and wrongly ascribed to the Prophet. So that is the reason that many of our scholars don't touch it themselves, and they don't even allow their students. I mean, they teach the Quran to a lot of students, and they pass down this guidance or this very firm directive that they must not even touch the previous scriptures because the Prophet became angry when Umar spoke about them.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Asif, please go ahead.
Yes, this my question relates to verse 62 of Surah Al-Baqarah that says, "Inna allazina amanu wal lazina hadu wan nasara was sabiina man amana billahi wal yawmil akhir wa amila salihan falahum ajruhum inda rabbihim wala khawfun alayhim wala hum yahzanun." So this verse clearly specifies the criteria for the eternal salvation in the hereafter. that is the belief in God, the belief in the hereafter, and the good deeds. So these are the three things. Then how can we say that it's essential that we are required to, in any case, believe in a particular scripture?
This is because if you look at the context does not tell us that this is the condition for salvation. What it tells us is that the idolaters used to say that for them it is sufficient if they become followers of Abraham. Similarly, the people of the book said that it is sufficient for them if they follow their own book. So they would cling to their own books and say that the guidance which is brought by their specific prophet is sufficient. It is in response to them that the Quran tells us in Surah Baqarah, verse 62, that your affiliation to a particular prophet is not going to give you salvation unless you also do these three things or four things, whatever I mentioned. So, belief in the prophets of God is already is a given because that was already under dispute. And Surah Baqarah has already referred to it earlier on in verse 40 or 39, which says, Aminu bima anzaltu, that you must believe in what I have revealed. That is what the Almighty has asked the Israelites. So that has already been referred to earlier on. And then people are being told that why is it that you think that being a Jew or a Christian or even a believer is sufficient? That is not sufficient to be part of a particular family of the followers of the prophets of God. You must have some additional responsibilities as well. So basically, verse 62 is not outlining the criteria for salvation. It tells us that this is what is required for people. Furthermore, than being part of the family of the prophets that they believed. Otherwise, as you can clearly see in verse 39 or 40, the words have been already discussed that Aminu bima anzaltu. It says that believe in what I have revealed to you, which of course was the fact that what was being said was that believe in what has been revealed to you before the Quran. So look up this verse of the Quran in verse 30. I think it's 39 or 40. You can just look it up. The invitation to believe in the Quran has already passed earlier on, 20 verses ago.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saleem, for another fantastic session. And thanks to all the participants for coming through. That was it for all the questions that we had today. So, inshallah, we'll be ending the session here, but inshallah, we'll see you all tomorrow in another session at Textual Study of the Quran. Until then, please take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.